welcome to another Cigar Federation video review. I'm John the Cigar Surgeon. Today we're going to be viewing the Havana Dreamin by CAO. This is released at the IPCPR 2015 in New Orleans. I haven't seen a lot of reviews on this, so it seemed good for us to do a review. It's got an Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper, and I'm not usually a fan of Ecuadorian Connecticut or Connecticut in general, but it's got a Nicaraguan binder and Nicaraguan filler, so that makes it a little bit more interesting for me at least. They come in three sizes, Robusto, Toro, and Torpedo. Today we're going to be smoking the Robusto. It's a 5x50. So we'll get cracking here. We'll do a nose and see what we can pick up. So pretty standard Connecticut wrapper. Lots of hay and sort of a barnyard cedar. Nothing really surprising there. Getting a lot more rich tobacco out of the foot, which makes sense if it's got Nicaraguan filler and binder. Well, that's all I can pick up, so I'm going to get to toasting and smoking here. So it's a nice warm day here, so I should have no problems with my single torch. Get this puppy lit. Of course, with any wrapper, but especially a Connecticut shade wrapper, you got to be really careful not to scorch it. It's a very, very easy thing to do. Even with a single torch, you can raise the temperature of the wrapper too high, or you can take the torch and you can sort of catch the edge of the wrapper, and it is going to impact the flavor profile for sure. So I'm trying to be careful here, give it a nice toast all the way around, and if I do the toast properly, it'll light the moment I start puffing on it. And again, the goal here is, to ignite the foot, get all the tobaccos burning without drawing any of that hot gas from the butane lighter or from the combusting tobaccos here into the cigar itself. All right, so that looks pretty good. I think we should be good to go. Grab my trusty V cutter, which is kind of my standard here for draw. Nice sweet draw. Kind of expected with that Connecticut wrapper. Draws a little bit on the tight side. So we'll let the first third settle in here, see what other flavors we can pick up. So the Connecticut influence here is obvious and apparent. I mean, starting out very much like a very traditional Connecticut. Hay, cedar, more hay on the retrohale. Maybe a little bit of sweetness on the retrohale. But that's it. So I'm assuming this Nicaraguan tobacco and binder are going to come to play once the first third sort of settles in. But we'll give it some time. We'll see what happens. So it's starting out pretty much like a traditional Connecticut. We're about 20 minutes in here. Hasn't really been any substantial flavor profile changes. Saying it's a traditional Connecticut is not a bad thing. There's a lot of people out there that really like Connecticut's. Again, I'm not really a fan of Connecticut's. Tends not to be in my wheelhouse. But lots of hay, lots of cedar, lots of sweetness. On the retrohale, the hay and the sweetness is a little bit more pronounced. Maybe a touch of pepper. Very, very subtle. That's about it. Hitting the 35-minute mark. Still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. Post-draw is really mostly hay and cedar. Not getting anything new on the retrohale, not getting anything new on the draw. So we're getting close to the end of the first third here. So I'll check back in the middle third and see if there's other flavor transitions that occur. Getting into the middle third here. There's a little bit of smokiness, like a very faint barbecue. But the post-draw is really dominated by hay. There's a little bit of lingering sweetness. It's there for a second, but the hay kind of runs it over. Again, presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. I'm not getting a lot of what I would traditionally expect out of Nicaraguan tobaccos in terms of pepper or full bodiness. So again, pretty traditional Connecticut. On the retrohale, getting a little bit more of that smokiness, a little bit of sweetness, but not a lot of change from the first third. In the 50-minute mark, wrapping up the middle third here, just starting to transition into the last third. The hay on the post-draw is starting to give way a little bit. Still that smokiness, a little bit of a drying mouthfeel from the cedar. So, I think water would be really good right about now. Nothing else really to report. There hasn't been, a substantial amount of profile changes. Still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. Hitting the 1 hour mark. Little bit of acrid note coming through as it transitions into the final third. Not a lot of flavor transition here. Again, more of the middle third. There's a little bit of smokiness that's a little bit more pronounced on the retrohale. A little bit of sweetness that's coming through. Finish is sweet. The hay that was so pronounced on the post draw has really led up to about a light plus. In the last third, there's a little bit of cocoa. The acrid notes that I was getting at the start of the final third kind of falling away. Again, still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. Wrapping up this video review of the CAO Havana Daydreamin'. Hope you've enjoyed the video review. If you did, toss us a thumbs up, throw a comment on our video. We certainly appreciate it. Check out the written review at cigarfederation.com. We'll be back next week with another cigar video review. Thanks very much. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm John, the Cigar Surgeon. Starting out very much like a very traditional Connecticut, pretty much like a traditional Connecticut, still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. Again, presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut, pretty traditional Connecticut. Still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut. Again, still presenting like a pretty traditional Connecticut.